So thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. We have our small group here on Zoom right now, and hopefully there's a number of people watching on YouTube. So we'll be continuing our conversation about Buddhahood and the jewel ornament of liberation. So we're going to begin by doing our opening prayers, and Aaliyah has agreed to be the Umze this evening and recite the opening prayers.
All right. So altruistic motivation. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in a state of unsurpassed, perfect, and complete and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, and complete and precious Buddhahood. Action Bodhicitta Prayer. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Short refuge prayer. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. 4 immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Very good. Thank you very much. So, does anybody have any comments or questions about anything that we've been talking about? In particular, you have any questions about Sagadawa this month in the calendar? As we said before, is the anniversary, the celebration of the birth of the Buddha, his awakening, his enlightenment and teaching, and his passing away, passing into parinirvana. Yes.
So last Sunday, I participated in a Sagadawa event. It was online. It was from Mitripa College in Oregon, and they had a specific series of aspirations they read. Part of it was the Shakyamuni Buddha Puja. I was wondering and I think that presented was in the same lineage as the Dalai Lama. But so I was wondering if the Kagyu has a different version of that ceremony.
Do you have a copy of our book, the Daily Practices?
Yep.
How's it titled? The Deity Yoga Text.
Yep.
Yep. First one is the Shakyamuni Buddha practice.
So they don't have a special one for the Sagadawa.
Oh, for the Sakadawa?
Yeah.
Um, well, what has been celebrated, I was at one on Sunday myself, and they celebrated what's called a Bum Suk. A Bum Suk, Bum means in this situation 100,000. So Bum Suk, and the Suk is an offering. So it's 100,000 repetitions of the mantra to accumulate merit and so on for oneself and for the object of your offerings and so on. But the offerings are made, in the name of the Buddha, but for the benefit of all others and so on.
Hmm.
So that Bum Sok is the practice that is very often done at this time.
So they did 100,000 of the Shakyamuni Buddha mantra.
Yes, it's symbolic. We didn't do 100,000, but there was an accumulation, and you consider all the people that are there together, that their
Hmm.
recitations are all accumulated together, and so
Hmm.
on. So it's
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
it's not strict literal in this
Hmm.
situation, but in the old country, in the monasteries, I'm sure it is.
Hmm. I did the Shakyamuni practice. I did 100,000 um when I first started the group. Sometime around that beginning, I started that, and I did do 100,000 recitations before I stopped doing that practice.
Okay. So the recitation we're talking about, let's just clarify what we're talking about. If y'all have the book here, um, so it starts off with an explanation of Shakyamuni, and then it goes into the refuge and the offering, the opening prayers, and then it has a visualization, and then giving some explanation of the visualization, and then it gets to the offering part where a prayer is recited, and the English translation. I'm on page 16 in the book here, and the translation says, "Supreme Teacher Bhagavan Tathagata Arhat, complete and perfect Buddha, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni Buddha, to you I pay homage, to you I make offerings, in you I take refuge." So that's one of the prayers that is repeated over and over again. That's like the object of the visualization. But then the accumulation is the next page where it says Teata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Ye Soha. So Teata literally means this is it. Teata, this is it. Om, the enlightened body, speech, and mind of, in this case, it's Shakyamuni Buddha, the enlightened body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. Muni means the sage. And then they don't use pronouns or adverbs. So if you want to make an emphasis of a particular word, you repeat it. So it says Om Muni Muni, like Om Muni, great Muni, wonderful Muni, extensive Muni. Then the next word it says Maha Muniye. So Maha is Sanskrit, and that means great. And Muni, again, means sage. And Ye means of the primordial nature, the realization of the primordial nature. So we're saying this is it, the enlightened body, speech, and mind of the great sage, the wonderful great sage, the magnificent great sage of primordial wisdom. And then Soha means may it be accomplished, may it be so. So we're saying this as we are transforming ourselves into the sage. These practices are a guide for us to be able to transform ourselves into these Bhagavans, into these deities, to recognize ourselves, to purify ourselves so that we become the deity and so on. So in the beginning, it's a difficult thing, and we're learning how to recite these and to have the courage and the commitment to begin the recitation. But as you progress along, and as you get to 90,000, 95,000, and so on, you begin to really understand the transformation. You really feel that all the obscurations, the blockages that have been blocking your heart mind go away, and you really feel yourself as Buddha, as the Bodhisattva, as connected to the Dharma and so on. So that's the practice that we do for Buddha Shakyamuni, and you can do that anytime. You can do it anytime. And then in the rest of the book are some other practices. There's Shenrezig, the Bodhisattva of compassion. There's Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of wisdom. There's the Buddha Green Tara, who is the mother of all the Buddhas. And then there's Buddha Vajrasattva, who is the confessor, who is like the purification of ordinary beings to become Buddha, to be able to reach that level of Buddha, to be able to be purified in that way, the perfection of that. So I didn't mean to hijack your conversation. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention? Did you enjoy the ceremony on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
How long did it
Yeah.
go?
It's only an hour, and I asked them for the prayers that they use, and then they sent me those, and there was more. They didn't do all the prayers in there. Like they had a prayer that did all the past lives of the Buddha. It had like 32 different past life referenced, and then they had another one, I think, about the Buddha's qualities, which was quite long. They kind of consolidated it, summarized it, I guess.
Yeah,
But I like that.
If they only did it 1 hour, they'd have to.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Everybody, we're always modifying it for our Western audiences.
Well, that's right, but it's to give us a taste of what it is, and maybe to whet our appetites that we want to engage more and more and more, and take up the practice and learn the meanings and so on like that.
Yeah.
Do you feel inspired with that, joining that?
Yeah, I liked it. I was I think I'm going to offer that at the temple next year. Offer that, that ceremony, for people to see if anybody might be interested in doing that.
Did you mention the lineage? What lineage was that?
The lineage, it's the Dalai Lama's lineage.
Gelugpa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
And we have another practitioner at the temple who's studying in that lineage. So I thought, the two of us could present it.
Well, very good. Okay. So, I'd like to ask everybody, if, we've been doing this now for what, 20 weeks. This is our 20th or 21st session that we've had. And tell me, if do you feel that there's been a change in your life generally? Has there been a more of a recognition of what we say of being awakened, of our Buddha nature, of recognizing that yes, we do indeed have Buddha within ourselves. We do have that Buddha potential and so on. So keep it simple like that. Alea, what do you think as an answer to that? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get it to unmute. I do feel like I have become a lot more like evolved and enlightened, and definitely feel like there's more of a light and belief of like my purpose and living my purpose, and like the Dharma, what that is. And I think it really reinforced a lot of concepts that I was learning like over time, also from a lot of my Ayurvedic studies as well. So just, learning about like the virtues and um, like the life of the Buddha also, and like the way he lived his life and how we do have that nature and what it's made up of. And, especially from the beginning when you were talking about, like the diamond and just the analogies and the way that everything has been like like given, like the information has been like you being a guide, I guess, for like this like study and practice and contemplation. I think that's been very helpful to kind of help guide me there, to help with, of course, like ending samskaras. So it's been a journey and a path, but it has built on a lot of what I know, but didn't really solidify. So I think this really helps solidify that just week over week. So yeah.
Has your purpose come into more focus? Has your purpose changed in any way, from when
Yeah.
you first began?
Yeah, I do think it has. And also opportunities have come my way that are in line with that purpose also. Hmm.
And the other, I know, you're very active with doing a number of things. Um, has it helped, your work with those other things, the yoga things and so on? Has that purpose, supported those things?
Yes. So I do think like a lot has actually shifted. I didn't tell Zara about this yet, but I was volunteering at a yoga studio and then I started working there. And I had a conflict with the yoga studio in terms of like starting yoga teacher training, going through a bullying situation. This was back in March. And then on top of that, I started teaching students at the University of Maryland School of Nursing, like back in January. So it was like really nice opportunities that kind of came all at the same time. And I had been at the studio 2 years prior to November last year when I started physically working there versus volunteering. So after getting in like a discussion or like disagreement essentially with like the owner about the situation. It was a known issue. I didn't appreciate being put in that situation. So now I'm out of that situation and I did kind of cut those ties, right? So it's like, yes, I should be doing yoga, but it's not right now. I don't need to get my 300-hour certification from them. I can kind of go on and do something that in my heart I know I want to do, which is the yoga therapy. To be able to teach people in the hospital and work with patients in that way. So that's a whole nother different certification. And luckily there is a school here in Maryland. It used to be called like the University of Notre Dame or something like that. And I think now it's like Maryland University of Integrative Health and Medicine or whatever it's called. So it's actually here in Maryland. And I was like, okay, I think I should just get a degree in what I need to do because all the roads are just not leading to continue with this 300-hour certification. It was more like a slap in the face. Like, that's not your purpose. Like, get out of there. And I was like, I don't want to. It's like, I know what I'm doing. And so I think I know, but then that ended up happening. So that karma ended. Then with the students, that was actually a positive thing that happened that I didn't necessarily want to do, but it came my way. And that also is in line with my purpose and my Vedic astrology of being a teacher and an educator. So I did do that. And then last week, actually, I missed class because I was doing another certification class, which is still ongoing until the end of February. It's just like 4 hours a day, but I ended up doing, I guess, 12 hours of education, one for like clinical educating as a nurse for students. And I'm actually trying to get I got continuing education credits for that. And then in the evening, I started a heart math program, which is about like your purpose and your authentic, self and your feelings and thoughts, and how to help other people kind of find that for themselves too. So that really resonates with me. So even though some karmas ended, some maybe began, that all fit into my purpose. So hopefully that kind of answers the question. But like you said, it's like a lot, but I'm glad that I finished like the yoga stuff, because I think that definitely needed to stop and definitely needed to end. And then picked up, I think in the fall, I'm going to continue teaching and maybe go back to school and get like a degree in education related to nursing. I already have 2 master's degrees, so we'll see what that. I think this is like some certificate program, so maybe that'll be enough. We'll see. But so I think it's all aligning, is what I guess I'm trying to say. And I know being like a lifelong learner and having like, successes and failures, it's part of the path. So basically that's kind of where I was trying to go with all of that. So yeah.
Well, very good. Well, we can circle back and talk about those individual things that you mentioned and everything, but it all sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
And it sounds like, that the Buddhism is part of that.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Definitely something I hold close to my heart. I feel like it's getting less confusing. Yeah.
Okay.
Of samskara, I guess. I'm having a cross.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
So Zara, let me ask you the same question. I think we've talked about these things before, but has there been any change that you'd want to talk about? Particularly because you've been involved in a commitment of the Nandro and so on, and is the sense of your Buddha nature, your awakened nature, has that come more into focus for you?
Yes. Right now I'm just going through the pathway with what I think you've called blind faith. I'm just going like I know this is the journey and I conceptually understand it intellectually. Now it's mostly become an experiential process, if that makes sense, where I've digested the initial teachings, right, from someone like yourself, from other teachers, the program I'm in, and now I'm working on the experiential stuff. So it's more of so that I've just solidified that this is the path and just to keep moving forward. Like everything in my life is better, and just for sake of time, um, I don't have any question or any sort of confusion about like the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Like all of that is correct for me and it's very visible now. Like it's easy to see and I can have hindsight now of past experiences and see now. But in general, I'm just a nicer, more intentional, thoughtful person in my just normal day-to-day role as as a sibling, as an aunt, as a coworker. So from a practical perspective, it's so much easier just to look at collective well-being, just from like a functional day-to-day, as well, like how my change benefits other people, as well. So thank you.
Are you getting a sense of of the eternal not? When we talk about, the 8 auspicious symbols and the eternal not, represents, our livelihood, how we're interconnected with society, other beings, and so on, the world, and so on like that. Do you have more of an awareness of that, or more of a place, finding your place in that, and is it a dynamic place? Is it something that you give energy to and you get energy from?
Yeah, I think probably everyone on here has some pathway or a small or individual dharma of being a teacher or guide in some way. So I know that about myself, but yes, back to like the eightfold path and right livelihood being one of those components. It's gotten easier to know what's yes and no, if that makes sense. Like for in relation to purpose and intention, that doing things for the right reason and not for the eight worldly concerns has gotten so clear that I don't follow what I want. I follow what's in the best interest of collective well-being, and then everything is always okay. I don't have to worry about money anymore, praise, blame. I just put my head down and do the right thing and know the next thing is to always put the well-being of others first. When I look at a decision that's being made, it's very easy now.
So the motivation itself has been clear, and when the opportunity comes up for corruption or misunderstanding or something, you're able to see that and correct that right away. Is that
Yes,
what you
yes,
say?
I'm so yes, Lance, I'm so mindful of my afflictive emotions as soon as they come up, whether it's something mean towards myself or another person, I catch the thought right away right there and identify it and face it. So it doesn't become an overt action like through speech. Like most people accumulate negative karma almost immediately through speech because they cannot contain their mouth. They just want to go off on someone or text or say, that's so much easier now. I'm like, oh, I bet that person's having a bad day. Like I literally just shift quickly. I'm like, I wonder what's going on in their life. Like as soon as I catch a negative thought, I replace it very quickly within seconds. Yeah. And joyfully, not in an angry way. I'm like, I wonder how their life's going. And I'm not mad about it.
Well, very good. Thank you very much for sharing all that.
Thank you for the good questions.
So, Kunga, you've been involved quite a while and so on, and I know that you've said that your curiosity about the Tibetan Buddhism, the Vajrayana, was a motivation for you to get involved in these discussions and so on. And how has that changed your view, if anything, and your activities? Being involved with the Vajrayana, how has that impacted your practice?
Well, I used to just be, sitting, sitting and watching the breath. And since I've been working with this group, I've been, doing the Nundro on a regular basis and incorporated some other visualization practices for working with bodhicitta. Um, so I think that those have been big changes in my practice. Um, so a little bit more direction in my sitting practice, not just sitting and watching the breath, but having a more of a focus in developing bodhicitta and developing merit through my Nundro practice, I guess.
So, if I can kind of paraphrase, then it's where your practice before had been more or less passive. Now it's a much more active process. What we call meditation, has layers to it, has stages to it, phases to it, and each one of those phases leads to the next one. And there's activity that is going on that ultimately leads to what we do call the meditation, which is that peace of mind, no thought, not chasing thoughts, and so on like that. So, are you seeing that progression?
Yeah, and I mean, I think I've been utilizing meditation off the cushion for a while, trying to develop the paramitas, trying to work with recitations during my regular day. So I have practices I do off the cushion, which are just expanded upon. But yeah, I do notice a big difference in my sitting practice and just the whole morning practice. It's just a lot more intense, a lot more requires a lot more diligence because it's more of a time commitment. Um, and I think that's been beneficial overall. Just maybe if we can think of our practice as sort of creating these kind of grooves in our life so that we'll utilize the practice more frequently. I can feel like the grooves are, deepening through that more committed practice in the mornings. And also through my daily recitation practices. I mean, I use recitations throughout the day, driving to work or walking the dog or things like that. Thank you.
Was the your goal, for lack of a better word, before you got involved with the Tibetan Buddhism, was your goal uh, peace of mind, or was it to be, become Buddha? How would you define that goal? Or
Hmm.
what? Or maybe that
I
wasn't
don't
the
think it
goal.
wasn't peace of mind. I mean, I've never I didn't get into Buddhism for peace of mind. I wasn't have that kind of I didn't have that kind of karma. Um, I've always been pretty laid back and not had when adversity wasn't overwhelmed by adversity. Even that's just part of my the way I've been. But I think that having more of an interest in deepening my practice because I'm in a position where I'm, training others to be teachers and also just training other students and introducing them to Buddhism and just feeling like I needed to have a deeper experience and understanding of the practice in order to be a good teacher. So that's sort of been my goal is to just deepen my understanding so that what I'm able to provide to the students is more meaningful and not superficial.
So help me understand. You say deepening. Is that to say having more realization, more epiphany? Is it more meaning of the academics, of the vocabulary, the intellectualization of it, or is it to have the personal experience of a deeper meditational practice?
Yeah, the deep, having a more of a personal experience um, of a deeper practice and just having the responses to life be more automatically, habitually eh, um, in falling with the paramitas, you know, to not have to stop and think about what the best course of action, but just be able to naturally move in that direction because that's what comes first to mind.
Do you
That's what
have
comes
more?
naturally.
Do you have more of a sense of the Bodhisattva?
How do you mean?
Well, before you engage with this discussion group, did you have a sense of the Bodhisattva, and has it changed since you've been part of this group?
Hmm. Well, I hope that my experience in the group has deepened that understanding, but it wasn't something new to me when I came to this group. Studied, I've already been studying the way of the Bodhisattva at the temple for a couple of years, and have studied a lot of the some of the other sutras that feature the Bodhisattva, and so it wasn't new information to me, but I'm hoping that my experience has deepened and I have a better understanding and able to practice those practices better, deeper.
All right, well, very good. Thank you very much. Thank you all for sharing that and saying the things that has been your motivation and your activities and so on. I think it's good to share that with each other, but it's also good to be able to verbalize it and hear yourself saying it. So what we've been trying to do this past, couple of weeks, and now going into, maybe just this week, is being able to crystallize, what it is to be Buddha. Understanding, what the pathway is to being Buddha, knowing that we have the potential, we have that energy within ourselves, and it's a matter of controlling that energy, learning how to do that, and to recognize the things that are obstructing that energy, that are intercepting, or they're interrupting, or whatever, to be able to control that energy and so on. So this is the work really of the Bodhisattva, when it gets into the finer points. So in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and in the outline book that we have, chapter 19 it's called The Method. It says it's the antidote to not knowing the method of practice for achieving Buddhahood. So chapter 19 is the method, the 10 Bodhisattva Bhumis. So the path, when we talk about the path, we're talking about this structure, if you will, a meditational purification structure. And I've used the analogy of the spiral many times and so on. So if we look at the spiral, that there's 10 circles of the spiral. So these are listed in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and they're listed in this booklet. So we don't have time to go into all of this and so on, but just to familiarize yourself that these things are there, and that, this is the kind of stuff that you can spend time doing meditation, doing what we call meditation, which is that active part of reading, of studying, of practicing, of contemplating, and so on. And then the meditation, the actual meditation, comes a little bit later on. It comes from the relaxation, when the mind rests. To use the yoga analogy, the Hatha yoga analogy, when I learned yoga 40, 50 years ago, it was popular that what we did, we had 12 or 15 poses, whatever it was, and each pose, you would go into and hold the pose, and you would stay there. You would remain in that pose for several minutes afterwards. And the point was that the body was now, all in union with that energy to hold you, and you weren't struggling anymore to hold that physical pose. And your mind was just centered on the purpose of that, and that there would be an epiphany, there would be an opening, there would be a realization that would come to that. There would be an actual meditation that would be a result of that physical stabilization, that intellectual stabilization. Is that still taught now? Leah, are you still teaching that? Because I know, I've heard that many yoga studios now are doing this Western version of the yoga where they don't do the meditation part.
Yeah, that is true. I think that's not emphasized as much anymore, unfortunately. But kind of like to Kunga's point about like the Western way of things being done like quickly, like the celebration thing was only done for an hour. It's similar with yoga classes too. It should be more like an hour and a half, but yeah, to include meditation and pranayama.
So, relating that back to the Bhumis, so when we're on the cushion, we're concentrating on the cushion yoga, not the physical yoga, but the meditational yoga. And so we get to the level of these Bhumis, and we've gone through the accumulations, we've gone through the applications, we've gone through the insight, we've been going through these different stages and so on. And now we're getting to these finer points of becoming a bodhisattva, and we engage in these 10 Bhumis. So they're listed here on page 31 in the outline book, and great joy, stainless, and so on like that. So to contemplate that on the cushion should be part of your practice. That's, to get to there. This may be beyond where you are at the present time in terms of what you're intellectually ready for and so on. But my point is that with this, by studying this now, wherever you are, it will inspire you to dig in and go back to the lower part of the spiral to get more involved with the meanings of the different things that we've been talking about, the paramitas, the perfections, and the virtues, the non-virtues, all the different things that we've been categorizing, to be able to get ourselves again ready to enter this part. When we enter this part as our main practice, we should already have a firm, stable hold, wisdom holding the understanding of all those other things. The 5 poisons, the 84,000 afflictions, all these different things that we've talked about up to this point. That should be firm with us. So if it reveals that we need to go back and do work, we should take that advice and go back and do the work. If we're ready to be able to say, okay, I've got a firm understanding in that, now I need to work on these this level of perfection, these Bhumis and so on, then so be it. That's what I should be doing. So getting familiar with it is my point. It's kind of like the carrot, and the carrot is, you want to get to that Buddha nature, you want to get to that peace of mind, you want to get to that wisdom. So this is the process to be able to do it. So going through these things, studying it, looking at the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation and other books, because there's other references, there's sutras, there's other ways to do this and so on. So each one of these 10 Bhumis then is elucidated upon in this booklet, and these are concise statements that have come from the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation and so on. So if you need to know what the stainlessness means, what the radiance means, what luminous, what very difficult to train in, it's by digging in and learning these things and meditating on these things, contemplating these things, that will give it to you. And it's work that you do by yourself. If you're stuck and you need help from a spiritual friend, whether it's a lama or it's one of your lay people, one of the sangha members or something, then that's what you do. So I'm making this point to you. So this takes us up to the climax of the 10 Bodhisattva Bhumis. It takes us to the 10th level, or the 11th level, we would say. You get to the 10th level, then you get to the 11th level, and there's kind of like this leap. There's no structure there. The Bhumis are very structured. When we come out of the Bhumis, there's no structure. There is a leap of faith, you could say. There is a leap of confidence. There is a leap of understanding, of knowledge, of gnosis, of the knowing, and so on. And so it says here on page 34, it says Buddhahood. Buddhahood is the Bhumi called the path of perfection, sometimes called the 11th Bhumi. All the obscurations of afflicting emotions which are subject to purification on the path of meditation, and the imputed assigned value, obscurations of knowledge, which are like sap, nutrients of a tree, are fully purified at one time when the Vajra-like absorption is generated, when the Vajra-like absorption is generated, that all this comes together and is absorbed into your physical body, your intellectual mind, and your spiritual heart is all absorbed into that as one thing. And this is the transformation now of becoming the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. So, and Buddha is not literal to say, well, here's the Buddha. You know, we talk about the historical Buddha, but that Buddha nature within yourself, the awakened quality of being a human being. And this is the perfection of being a human being. This is the completion stage of being a human being. All this stuff is taking us through the structures to be able to get to recognize our perfected human being self, is what we're trying to do. So, any questions or comments about any of that? Okay. Is that doable? I mean, is that in the program, or is that down the road? And it's okay if it's down the road. Okay. So it's my job to point these things out. So the next few pages, page 35, 38, 35, 36, 37, or excuse me, just 35 and 36. Let me go back and check. Yes. Then these enumerations are listed. The 10 equanimities, the 12 trainings of the 6th Bhumi, the 8 trainings of the 8th Bhumi, the 12 trainings of the 9th Bhumi, and the 10 trainings of the 10 Noble Bhumi Sutra. So there's more detail here to help that contemplation, to help the understanding, to make it relative to your life. You know, I think that's one of the things that why, you know, we're involved in these conversations, is because we're relating it to our experience living in America at this time and so on. You know, we're not taking anything away from the teachers who come from overseas and were raised in the monasteries and so on, but it's a different culture. And our culture is based on, you know, knowledge, our understanding that, many would say that we live in ways that we're like kings and queens and so on like that. And we can run away with those kind of thoughts and so on. But we do have good karma. We are born in a good place. We do have noble births and so on. You know, it's not as grandiose as it might have been in the old days and so on. And, we might have been part of a noble, kingdom or something like that. But we're ordinary citizens here in America. And so we're taking advantage of that. And we're using the nutrition, or feeding the nutrition of the Dharma so that we can apply it to our Western lives and so on. So I think this is one thing that, we can do very well because we have a similar cultural experience, and we can put things in terms that we can share with each other and understand with each other and everything. So it's making it relative and relevant to our human existence and in this country, in this land, and so on like that. So that's what this helps to do. So that's what I'm trying to point out to you. So this bears some individual study to really get through this. If I go through and just read it out loud and parrot that and then give some definitions, it's not going to be as helpful as you doing it yourself on your own time and so on. That's where the benefit is going to come. Yes, Gunga.
So when you were talking about how the West is different from from Tibet, I was thinking about the this idea that we can think of our Western lives as sort of like kind of like living in the God realm. We have all these amazing things that the old stories would say the gods have. We can fly through the air, we can go, we can go 100 miles an hour. Um, we can travel great distances, really short period of time. We have all the food and things we need right there available in our refrigerators or just right down the street from us. So think that we have a lot of luxury, a lot of distraction. And so one of our obstacles is kind of not getting carried away with the distractions. And I heard a teacher talking today about they were talking about how anytime you have something that happens to you that you don't want to happen, you could treat that as an austerity. The Buddha, you could think of that, treated that as an ascetic path. You're giving that up. He says rather, say for example, like Aliyah gave the example, she had to leave that yoga training program. So instead of saying, oh, someone, something happened and someone made me leave that program, you just say, well, I'm just giving that up because that's part of as aesthetic practices. You can't have everything, so I'm giving that up. I've been forced to give that up, so I'm recognizing that. And someone who was in the audience of the teacher said, well, the Buddha went through those austerities so that and decided that wasn't the way. And the teacher said, well, you know the Buddha's middle way is not middle class America. He said the Buddha was still living in the forest even after he became awakened. He was still living austerities. So we shouldn't think that our life, living our life the way we live it is the middle way. He said austerities are still needed. It's just not, your comfort of your middle class life is not the middle way that the Buddha was talking about. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Uh, are we practicing for next week or next month or next year or next lifetime? And it's a combination of those things. It can be all those things at the same time. And what is it to be a human being? I think the fundamental question that we all need to answer is, what is it to be a human being? And how much of that is our physical body, how much of that is our intellect, and how much of that is our spirituality. And how dynamic is that? How does that change, at any given time in our lives and so on? So I think those are, those are the questions that we need to be able to grapple with, to be able to understand and be in charge of our lives. To me, the thing that I've learned from Buddhism is to be responsible. I was very irresponsible before. I did what I wanted when I wanted to do it, and I didn't care. It didn't matter to me as much, what other people thought or anything like that. It's just what I wanted to do, and I didn't have a sense of responsibility about it. But that's changed, tremendously.
With that idea of responsibility, I would add on to that taking responsibility for the things that you don't want that happen to you, to take responsibility for those things rather than to blame them on, someone else or something that happened in something that was outside of your control. If something whatever happens to you, you take responsibility for how you're going to react to it.
Yeah. And some of it is how do you say, environmental. Where we live and so on. There's certain cancers. They're endemic to where we live and so on, and we choose to live here, and we take responsibility for that. It's not that we're going to get cancer because of karmic things that happened 3 lifetimes ago or something like that, but it's the fact that you are a human being and you're living in a certain place, and you're prone to, be able to be affected by, the things that cause cancer in your area and so on like that, or heart disease or lung disease or whatever it is. So yeah, I agree with what you said. So anyway, so this is pointing these things out. So that's on the path to becoming a Buddha. So now, what expectation do we have of what it is to become Buddha? Should we have an idea? I've often said that, in the beginning classes of Buddhism 101, I say, we're going to, it's like having a 2,000-piece jigsaw puzzle that we have to put together without a picture. And that's what, this Dharma is. It's a different way of life. It's a different culture. It's got a different vocabulary and all that kind of stuff. And we got to put all the pieces together and see how it relates to our life here. The fundamental essence of it has not changed over 2,600 years. And it won't change in 2,600 years going forward and so on like that, because that's the essence of it. And we share that essence with the other traditions. Buddhism is not unique in this. It has a way of explaining it, and making it recognizable for ourselves. But the Christians have it, the Muslims have it, the Hebrews have it, Hindus, etc. They all have, the essence teachings and so on. So my point now is, what is the goal? Where are we headed? What is it to be Buddha? Is it just, the little guy who's sitting, like a statue with his legs crossed and he's got his eyes closed or open, or he's looking out in the vast expanse of space with no thought or something like that? What does it mean to be Buddha? So the next chapters, the next chapter 21 and 20 and 21, are giving you a sense of what that is. So the first one is chapter 20, and it's the result of going through the Bhumis, the result of being a human being and coming to the point of realization and now becoming a Buddha, perfect Buddhahood. We talk about that we are ordinary beings, and we are ordinary because we're impure. We're confused. We're deluded. We have hatreds. We have all these afflictive emotions. We have wrong mental thought and all these kind of things. And so we're living an impure life, but that doesn't mean we don't have glimpses of the purity. We don't have points that we can fix and we can repair and so on like that. But that also means that we can fall backwards. We can have lapses and so on. How stable are we in these? In perfect Buddhahood, all that has been transcended. All that has gone, there's no going back. We have reached the point of becoming the true nature of what it is to be a complete human being, to be a living Buddha. So it says the result in the body of perfect Buddhahood. So again, I'm not going to go through and read each line here and so on. I'm not qualified to do that very well, and there are teachings that I can suggest to you that would help you if you really want to dive into that. But I think it would begin by reading this booklet. When you're doing a practice, say, my practice is going to be reading this booklet, and I'm going to do one chapter at a time. And if I have to spend a month, 2 months on one chapter, then that's what I'm going to do. And then there'll be a benefit. There'll be a result. It's like going to a gym and you want to build up some musculature and so on. You can't do it the first time you go. And it takes time to do that. And once you do that, you work on your arms, you work on your chest, you work on your legs, whatever, and you get a good foundation of that and say, well, now I need to work on my back. I need to work on, my toes. I need to work on other parts of my body, so I'm going to spend time on that. And then, you're going back to what you did before to keep it fresh, to keep it strong, but you're inviting new things, in your physical exercises. This is the same thing with your meditation. You're inviting new things with your meditation. So this gives you a very, very, very excellent understanding of what that is. And again, if you have questions or so, you have spiritual friends that you can talk to about this. So, and to take advantage of that is very, very good. So, it gives more definition. It gives references to sutras. You can look up the sutras if you need information how to do that. I can help you with that. So it's on page 40. It's saying, here are the 8 characteristics of the 3 Buddha bodies. Well, what are the Buddha bodies? The Buddha bodies we talked about before, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, and the Nirmanakaya. So what are the characteristics of those? These are things that we're replacing obscurations. The obscurations, the 8 worldly concerns, are what we're thinking about all the time. We want to replace those things with these noble things, with these things of the Dharma. So here are the things of the Dharma. This is what we replace these thoughts with, and so on. And then, collectively, these things transform ourselves. We've said before, that dharmic study in Buddhism is a lifestyle. And, I think, those were the questions I was asking before. How have you changed since, in these 20 weeks that we've been together talking about these things, and everybody's had their experience of changing and so on. So now go to the next level. So here on page 40 again, it says, here are the special traits of Buddhahood. There's equality. There's permanence. There's appearance. So the equality is the sense that all this is all the same. Animate and inanimate all come together. We see all this as energy, different forms of energy, but we see it all as energy, the equanimity. We see the permanence of that because this is the absolute wisdom. This is the absolute, we experience it, but we can't tell you what it is. We can't tell ourselves what it is, but we experience it. And it's the permanence about it. There's an indestructible nature about it. That's what the Vajra is. Vajra means indestructible nature. So we begin to do that, and that becomes transformative. We get a strong sense, awareness, and functionality of certainty. Even in the phenomenal world. In the phenomenal world, we can apply that certainty and so on. And so this impure life that I was talking about before begins to become pure. We see that the impurity is just a reflection, a misinterpretation of that purity. Our ego, our misinformed intellect is redefining what this phenomenal nature is. And it's doing it in negative ways that are tainting our lives and so on. So to become a complete human being, a wholesome human being, we need to refine, we need to redefine all these things. So permanence is one of those aspects. We talk about the analogy of the permanence of the vibration and so on. And the scientists, as they study with the space telescopes and everything, and they're seeing evidence of this, but it, again, it's just appearance, so putting all this together, all at the same time is an awesome project. And then the third trait of Buddhahood is the appearance. The physical appearance, what appears to you, what you see as appearance. What others see in you, that's less of a thing as to what you see all of this as. And we begin to redefine, all this as a Buddha field, our Buddha field, Lance's Buddha field, Kunga's Buddha field, Aaliyah's Buddha field, Zara's Buddha field. Everybody has their own Buddha field that's going to have your palace in it, and your teachers, your spiritual friends, and so on like that. And to whatever degree you can purify that, we do that on the Bhumis, and now we've come to the point of being able to be the embodiment of that, the living Buddha. So then the next chapter, chapter 21, are the activities of the Buddha. Now, what is the Buddha going to do with all this? With my body, speech, and mind, all the enlightened ones, what is their functionality? What are they doing? Do they just sit on the hill? Do they just sit on the cushion for the rest of their lives? Or are they actively participating in society, in the world, and so on like that? To what degree, and how are they affected by it, and how are they influencing others, and so on? So this activities of the Buddha is benefiting sentient beings without conceptual thought. Is doing it without conceptual thought. We will have refined our thoughts on the Bhumis. By the time we get to that leap where we become Buddha, now things become just very spacious, and the thoughts are only there when the Buddha is asked a question, when the Buddha is involved in some work or something like that. Without that question, without being invited in some kind of discussion or something, that Buddha will just go to its natural state, which is peace, which is quiet, which is no thought, as we know it, It doesn't mean that things aren't coming through. Images are coming through. We have our eyes. We're still a living human being, but now we're a living Buddha human being. And we're seeing all these things, but we're not affected by it. We can affect others by our radiance, the qualities that I was mentioning before, back in the pages here before, where I was talking about the definitions of radiance and permanence and things like that. So we still have those qualities. We're a complete human being. So we're doing this without conceptual thought. Wisdom arises up. One of the things about meditation that it brings about is the meditation calms the physical body, calms the intellectual mind to the point where there's no fidgeting, there's no moving around, there's no jumping from one thought to another or anything like that. There's just peace. And then what happens is all the blockages of the heart are removed, and the wisdom from the heart center, our spiritual center, just becomes obvious, becomes evident, and it rises up, and it becomes our body. That becomes who we are, that wisdom. We become that actualization of the wisdom, of the understanding, and how to manifest that. And it becomes automatic. It's not something that we have to engage. It's already engaged. That's the point of being the Buddha. There's a perfection there. So this goes in and talks about, the activities of the mind, the activities of speech, and the activities of the body. So there's only 2 pages for the activities of the Buddha. And then we become effortless. Effortless like a Brahma. Effortless like the sun. Effortless like the wish-fulfilling jewel. So likewise, the echo, space, and earth are similes for benefiting sentient beings without conceptual thought. It's like a lighthouse. A lighthouse is just sitting there, and it's just turning the light for ships to not, crash on the shore, come too close to the rocks, and so on like that. It becomes like that. So to some degree, you're already like that, I'm sure. There are people who think of you in those kinds of terms. Oh, Kunga is such a great teacher. He's so much like the Buddha when he sits and he's giving talks and so on. He's so much like that. And Alea, she's doing so many different things and helping so many different people, and people respect that and so on. And Zara, she's doing the same thing. She's doing her work, helping people with great disadvantages and so on, and helping people who are ordinary beings and helping them, do their work and so on. Through her generosity and so on. So there's people who already recognize, the work that we're doing. We are born with some of that. Some of that we brought with us because we have good karma, So we have that. Now we're at the stage of being able to connect this with our Western selves and the Eastern selves. The Eastern selves being the technology of the mind. Here we have the technology of the physical, and it's bringing the two together. We have the benefit of both. So as a Buddha, we're able to do that. That's what happens as a result of being a Buddha. So I think that's all I can say about this right now. Anybody got any comments? Well, I hope it's helpful.
It made me think about, we talk about Buddha nature, and there's all those different similes about the Buddha nature. I think it's in here, right?
Yes.
The different similes.
Yes.
Do you remember what page that was on?
It's going to be in the early part of the book. Just a moment.
Oh, maybe it's on
It's
under
there.
cultivating bodhicitta. Is it kind of that similes, or is there another one?
Sorry, wait a minute. Let me use this far. Just a moment. They're in here.
There's a list on page 15, but I don't think that's the same list.
Well, so what's the point?
Just this idea that we have this Buddha nature. It's within us. It's something pre-existing, but we're trying to mine it or reveal it or clear away the obscurations so that it can shine forth. I think that idea that this Buddha nature is not something. This Buddha is not something that we need to acquire through education. It's more of a trying to clear away the kleshas or the emotional obscurations that are clouding our vision. Like we have the vision, we have vision right now, but our vision is filled of all these obstacles, and we're trying to find a way to kind of see through these obstacles or see beyond these obstacles or have these obstacles see no longer block our view. And then once we have that clarified vision, then we will be able to live with that, live out that Buddha nature.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is on page 15. You said page 15, chapter 9, the method, cultivation of bodhicitta. So here are the 22 similes of bodhicitta. So Well, there is, the teacher does point things out to us that we may not have the capacity to recognize without the teacher pointing it out to us. The teacher can save us lifetimes of, rebirth and so on, having to learn these lessons over and over again. So the teacher can be very helpful, and we learn from it. But then we have to practice it. Then we have to become the embodiment of it. Just knowing it vicariously from the teacher telling it to us doesn't mean anything compared to becoming the embodiment of it, where we can repeat it ourselves to others, that we become a teacher, and that we have become the embodiment of it. So I think I don't know if that's the point you were trying to make, but I think that's the point that we have to abide by.
And I think another benefit of the teacher is that if we try to teach ourselves, I was listening to another teacher talk about this idea, that we'll tend to just try and learn, what we think we want to learn or what's meaningful to us. We're very kind of self-referential in what we learn. I'm only learning what I think is helpful to me.
Right.
But if you have a teacher, then you're opening yourself up to learning, things that necessarily maybe don't come easy to you, or you don't feel like that's not the truth, but you're being the teacher's presenting it to you to look at. And so that's more beneficial because you're not just working with where your strengths are, you're kind of working with things that are a challenge to you as well. Otherwise, it can be like spiritual materialism. You just collect all the spiritual practices that you like, and you disregard the ones you don't like, or you don't understand. And then it can become just like another pursuit of building up yourself. Now you're building up a really big spiritual self, spiritual ego.
Well, like we were talking about a few minutes ago, we were talking about impure and pure. And there is a system of purifying the impure. And that's what this is. In very clear, distinct ways of being able to do it. But we have to do the work, with this guidance, within the system, and then we find we become the embodiment of the system. So I think, that's one of the big problems for Western people is to give up the ego to the point that, oh, I'm finished school, I'm making, $250,000 a year, and I live in a nice house, and I got a nice car, and I got all the things that I need, and I'm a young man. I'm still 40 years old, 50 years old. I'm on top of the world, But to be able to put that aside and say, there's something else. There's this whole spiritual aspect, and all that stuff is just contamination that is robbing you of your freedom. You don't realize it. But when you expose it, when the teacher exposes it for you, then you realize and you say, oh, yeah, I need to work on these things. So I think, it's that. Imagine knowing what you know now. And if you had the opportunity to safely and simply be reborn, how would you want to be reborn? And just think about that. And are you doing the work? Are you creating the karma and sustaining the karma that is going to allow that to precipitate? And knowing that, coming to grips with that answer, then can you accomplish that in this lifetime? Do you have to wait to die and be reborn in another body and so on to be able to make to live that kind of a life? What does they say? Today is the first day of the rest of your life.
Or today is the only day of the rest of your life, because you only have now, this moment, ever.
Well, that's more succinct, isn't it, to the question. So again, it's taking responsibility.
You take the pressure off too. You can only do it now. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do tomorrow. As long as you're doing the practice now, you're covered.
Well, I look at it, I want to be uncovered. I want to be free. You know, I'm not worried about what I don't know as much as how I can live what I do know, I can be responsible for. If new stuff unveils itself, unfolds, I'll have to deal with that, won't I? So in what context can you do that? Do you do it in the context of the Dharma, or do you do it in context of, well, I'm going to get paid another $50,000 if I take this job, you know? So it's easy for me to say I'm retired. But, I was aware a long time ago of three phases of my life. There was my childhood, there was my operational age where, I'm a young adult and I'm working, I'm making a family, doing all these things. And then came the stage where now I can do exactly what I want. I can be an older person, and I can have the wisdom, the experiences of what I've done now, and be able to, reshape my life or do whatever the work is, molded for the next life, whatever it is. So there's three phases. I categorize my life in those three things. So these conversations are to share what each of us is thinking. You know, you all shared, what you're thinking about, the questions we discussed and everything, and I'm sharing what goes on in my life and so on. And I think that's the whole ingredient. I think that's the wisdom of the West, is that sharing. Because I don't see that in the East as easily as it's done in the West. Things are, in the East, things are still pretty buttoned up. But I think it's through the conversation, the discussion, that things, that's how we recognize the third obscuration, habitual tendencies. All right, does anybody have any last comments? So thank you very much. So we're going to circle back into the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation. There's a number of things that we skipped over or we didn't talk about thoroughly enough. So, my hope is that, you'll have a much better confidence on the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation when this is all through. So whether there's going to be 5 sessions to go or another 10 sessions, we'll play it by ear and see, as long as you guys are willing to be part of it. Last week, Aliyah, I asked the people that were present, do you want to take a break for the summer, or you want to continue, with finishing the JEWEL Ornament of Liberation? And everybody said they wanted to continue. So I hope that's okay with you, and you'll be able to partake of that. All right.
Sounds good.
All right. All right. So, Aliyah, would you do the dedication prayer, please?
Yep. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage Lama, divine assembly of Gidams and assemblies of Vedas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samskara and nirvana and innate root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samskara or rebirth as a Vaka or
Shravaka or Pratyeka Buddha.
Buddha. Okay, thank you. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, and mine, obstructors who harm me, misleading Maras, and hordes of demons experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise even for a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such, and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om Ang Hom. Om Ang Hom. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Kunga, Leah, Zara, thank you. Everybody on Zoom or on YouTube, thank you. All right, so we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
All right.